Welcome everybody to the first Language Teachers Forum for 2016.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks everyone for braving the shocking weather. If it's not stinking hot one minute, it's pouring rain the next, so half of us are dry and hot and the other half are wet and bedraggled. Now my presentation is just a presentation, it's not a workshop today. I'm just going to fill you in on some things we've been doing, and Elke is kindly going to do the fun activity stuff after me, because we know you can't go home without doing something fun and hands-on. So I'm going to talk about a program, and this is me, Kathy Harris, Education Services Officer at ISQ, or Independent Schools Queensland. So the independent sector looks after 190 independent schools in Queensland. So they range from the Gulf to Brisbane City, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, you name it, we're all over the place. And some of those schools, obviously, you'll know as the Brisbane Grammar and those large schools, Ipswich Grammar School. But we also have loads and loads of smaller schools. So there's Emerald Christian College, All Souls St Gabriel's at Charters Towers, places like Arethusa in Spring Hill. Does anybody know Arethusa? No, it's a school for children who are disengaged from learning, potentially have very low literacy levels. It's called a special assistance school. They actually have a workshop there to create skateboards, and they make and design them and ride them, of course. Great school, and there's loads of special assistance schools. We have about 40 out of the 190 are special assistance schools. So I think in the media we tend to be portrayed as the fancy posh private schools, but in fact what we are is just independent of other associations. And there's quite a mixed bag of schools in there. So it's my job to look after languages education and STEM education, amongst other things, for Independent Schools Queensland. So we had an issue a couple of years back. You remember the NALSAP funding, is that how you said it? Yeah, so funding models changed. That money stopped, and the money moved into a bucket of money that was given to schools rather than given to education sectors like mine to disseminate through projects. So all of our projects had to stop, and we had to find other ways to support schools to offer languages education. So a problem that we found was that although we had 400 language teachers across the state, many schools didn't have a languages program. And those schools that did have a languages program had concerns with keeping their teacher. So in regional cities, and I'm not talking about small places, I'm talking about Townsville and Cairns and Rockhampton, Gladstone, Bundaberg, they couldn't keep their language teachers. Teachers would come in for a year or two and then move on for various reasons. And so there was this scramble to find a language teacher every year and hold on to them. And of course this created problems, as you can imagine. There's the swapping between languages. You know, one year you've got Japanese in the school, next year it's Chinese, and next year it's French, depending on who you can find. So the language is not well planned and thought through for the coming years. It's a case of just hiring whoever you can find in the neighbourhood. And they do get some great language teachers. I don't want to put language teachers down, they get some great ones, but sometimes they just can't keep them. And there's obviously broken pathways where you'll have a couple of years where there is just no language offered in the school. And obviously that's staffing issues and a headache for leadership. So we decided to do something about that. What we thought we'd do was provide some funding through government funding to support classroom teachers who were already working in independent schools, already registered teachers, to upskill themselves in a language. Before you all die of shock, let me tell you that the majority of the teachers we've looked at learnt a language in high school and then are trying to get that back. So you know yourselves, if you don't use a language for a long time, it vanishes in the ether and you think you don't know it anymore, but once you start learning it again, it comes back. So we've had several teachers, I'll tell you the numbers in a bit, take up a couple of different options. So initially in 2014, we offered them either language studies, which was a diploma course. You could do a diploma at Griffith or any other university, either online or face-to-face, whatever suited that person. A lot of our choices, all of our choices had to be available online as well, because some of our teachers are in very remote locations. They're not all in Brisbane City. The other option we gave was the intensive program, and that was not a study program. It was 2 weeks in-country study tour in the target country, homestay, lessons every day, cultural activities in the afternoon, plus an online course of approximately a term or 10 weeks, either before they go or when they get back, among some other things. So I'll explain them a little bit more. So the language studies, what we did find was that in some cases there wasn't a diploma of languages offered at a university, but they would offer Bachelor of Arts, where you could choose only language subjects or language and similar subjects, and then opt out at an exit point that would give you a diploma. So it wasn't an official diploma, it was more of an exit point. So these are the universities that we found that did do that or offer a diploma of languages. They're generally about 2 years part-time, and we decided that we would fund the full course of the diploma, which was approximately $6,000 per person over 2 years, as long as they could get a Commonwealth supported position, which was about the $6,000. They did have to have agreement from the principal, so the principal had to agree that this teacher was a good option for becoming a languages teacher. They had to have a plan in place for what they would do to support that teacher, and a plan in place for how they would introduce the language in the school. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. The intensive language program was a study tour and an online course initially, and the countries we went to were Japan and Germany and New Caledonia for French. We did try and do Indonesia, but we didn't get enough interest to have a large cohort. We needed a cohort of 10 to 12 teachers for that particular tour. And that didn't happen. And the online courses were generally done through these organisations, depending on where the person was. In some cases, it had to be tutoring online. So the study tour to Japan was to Kanazawa. Very pretty. I didn't get to go. Oh. Yes. General sigh of, oh, poor Kathy. I got to organise it and not go. It's beautiful, isn't it? I'd love to go. Now we've had... we're about to send our fourth teacher there, and the three who've been previously raved about the course and also about the experience. So they had a fantastic time, of course. They bought lots of little silly resources to bring home to class, just things at the supermarket even. But they found the course very intensive but really well paced, and they learnt lots. Really upskilled them very well. The study tour to New Caledonia, we've only done that once. We didn't get a big enough cohort the second time, so it just depends on how many numbers we get. They went to Crapac in Newville in New Caledonia. Again, they had a fabulous time, not surprising, and also brought back lots of great resources for the classroom. And they were a small group, and their teacher at Crapac differentiated in the class, because we had a teacher who could speak passable French but hadn't done anything with it for a long time. We had two teachers who had absolutely no language background whatsoever, nothing. And we had one teacher who had been homeschooling herself, so to speak. So she'd been learning online, reading books, going through courses herself, and she was doing really quite well. So that's a big difference. I'm sure you know what that's like in the classroom. So that he catered for all of that. They all do well with it. The study tours to Germany so far have been to Göttingen and Hamburg. So the teachers can choose where to go. So the Goethe Institute supports this, the Goethe Institute in Sydney, and they have centres of learning all over Germany. And you can, once you get approved into the program, you can choose where you go. So the first two teachers who went to Göttingen, because it was beautiful, little medieval university town, wasn't quite as big, not as much of a metropolis as the likes of Berlin. And these two teachers were both regional teachers. One had no passport and had to apply for a passport, had never been out of the country before, so it was important to her that she go to a nice place where she could feel a little bit of hometown love and not a massive city. The third teacher to go went to Hamburg because their particular schooling organisation had a sister school relationship with another school in Hamburg, so she was able to visit when she was there and get relationships going again. They had to do stuff, these teachers. They had to, they were strongly encouraged to join MLTAQ, and attend network meetings. The people who did the diploma, and later, a year later, we added another option to that diploma. Instead of doing a straight diploma, you could also just do other studies, which is really, I'm surprised we got this one through. It's very wide open to interpretation. So some of those teachers doing the other studies are hiring tutors, are doing online courses, are going on short courses, anything that helps them to progress their language but doesn't have to be a formal tertiary qualification or even through a formal school. They do have to document what they're doing, and we need to see progress by the end of the first year and end of the second year. The intensive so they had to do 2 discussion posts. So we have an online learning management system called Connect and Learn, where teachers can get together and discuss and share resources and hear about news. So they had to put 2 posts there over the 2 years of their studies, and they had to jointly write an article for our online publication Catalyst, which they've done. And the intensive program had to do something similar, except they needed to also provide a teaching and learning resource, which they put on Connect and Learn too, to share with other teachers. So, a bit more detail. We know there was a federal government push a little while back to have 40% of our Year 12 students graduate with a language, which, is pretty tough. Possibly not going to see that happen. They want to see it by 2025. So this is our attempt to help with that. We know there's a shortage of language teachers in regional areas, not so much in Brisbane. And we did find too that some teachers in the classroom wanted a challenge, they wanted a change in their career, to do something different, and this gave them that option. So the intensive program was considered a fast track. They studied tour in the online course, and we tried to introduce them to a mentor when they got home, somebody who was experienced teaching that language and was happy to share and discuss and keep an eye on their progress. And the language studies gave them a tertiary qualification, or in the other case of other studies, it gave them lots of study choices. So if they were remote, for example, they could do Skype tutoring online. If somebody in the community spoke the language, they could use them to do mentoring. And again, they were introduced to a mentor. The funding initially came from Commonwealth Student First Support funding, but in the meantime that's changed now to Education Futures funding, which probably means nothing to you, but it's kind of the replacements of the NALSAP funding. It's where the money went, besides out to schools. And of course it couldn't have happened without the Goethe Institute, because the Goethe Institute gave the teachers a free online course which is worth around $800 or $900. This is the intensive option. They also gave them a scholarship to do the 2-week course in Germany, and then we needed to fund the airfare and a few other bits and pieces. So it was pretty much half the cost for the Goethe Institute, so it was great that they did that. And the Australian Japanese Society supported us with the Japanese teachers, so they provided the Ishikawa Foundation, the prefecture, paid for the course and the home study, and we just got the teachers there and back. So we really need one for Spain, France, Indonesia. It's really hard to find that sort of support, but it's because it comes from government funding in those countries. And I keep my eyes open. Let me know if you hear of anything really good, and we'll try and get involved in it. So the school I mentioned earlier, the principal had to agree and had to support the teacher. They had to provide a letter on letterhead signed saying they were going to support the teacher and they were going to help the teacher to integrate into teaching languages. Now that's very important, the mode that suits the school. So although we've got lots of teachers who've gone through the program and are already teaching, some of them are teaching only to their own class. Some of them are teaching to their own class and the class next door. Some are teaching school-wide, depending on their language abilities and what sort of background they had in the language in the first place, and the needs of the school, of course. So far, we're just starting our 3rd year. We have 21 new language teachers, which is huge. 11 new language programs, so there are 11 programs started as a result of this, and 7 of those, which I'm pretty proud of, are in regional schools. There's one in the Burdekin, Gladstone, Charters Towers, and in fact all over the place. And 17 of those 21 teachers are already teaching the language, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes just to their own class, sometimes to the class next door, or to the early years, doing a little bit of a roving run around. In one case, we have 3 teachers in the school who've all trained over time, and they're all taking part in teaching the language. They're all supporting each other to do it, covering maternity leaves and those sorts of things. So that's all I wanted to say. I got through that rather quickly.
Good afternoon, my name's Elke Jackel. I actually teach at Ormiston College. Currently I'm seconded to the CTC material development, so don't ask me any questions, I'm not allowed to divulge anything. That's all I'm allowed to say. Just so that, yes, so where we say teachers in the classroom, I have made a different move to be out of the classroom this year. I was part of, is it Tedesco, which is a national online professional development time one afternoon on app smashing with Joe Dale, and Kathy Harris was on there, and they were talking about green screening, and I went, oh Kathy, if you want someone to talk about it, I can do that for you. Little did I know this is where I'd end up. So green screening basically is using a backdrop, getting rid of the backdrop and putting in another backdrop in behind it. So this is my green screen. You might find in your in your film and TV departments and whatever else that they have a professional green screen somewhere in the school, but I just use a green sheet. It can be blue, all right, just a colour that may not be so often in clothes that people wear. Okay, so today we can even use the blank wall because that's a blank background and you can remove that background. Now, I do it through PowerPoint because PowerPoint allows you to remove that background quite easily. So I'm going to show you a couple of images of where the original with the green screen and then the superimposed behind it. But before I do that, I'll show you what is the end product or what you can do with that. And that is my grade 10s. They performed fairy tales to their junior school classes. We took, while they were dressed up, we took green screen photos. We brought them back. I said, here are my photos, background photos you can use. Redo them in PowerPoint to create the fairy story as a voice production with the green screens. All right, so let me indulge a little bit. I'll show you. Don't listen necessarily. The language is not perfect, but that's not the point behind some of this. So in these, you can see that the images are of the people and the background have been superimposed from it. Basic movie technology, if you like. Superman flies because he has a blue screen behind him that they can superimpose whatever buildings or whatever else they like behind him. And that's what, in the movie industry, green screening or blue screening is all about. Okay? So that's how I've started using it. The students then work with it the best they can or what they would like to do with it, and some of them come up with some really elaborate pieces of things. Okay? For example, the project was, for my group at this particular point, they had fractured fairy tales. So they could choose a fairy tale. They rewrote the fairy tale in German, presented it to my grade 5 classroom or grade 4 classroom because our students start at grade 5 to learn the language. So they produced a fractured fairy tale. They got dressed up. They performed it. And I said, while you're in costume, let's take some photos. And there is the beautiful sheet. There are the photos. Okay, so that's what the green screen does. Okay, when you then import this photo, which I'll do, so I'll go through the process, I hope. So if you open up then a blank PowerPoint presentation, oops, I just closed it, pardon. Yeah, you can tell how often I do this. I should know better. Okay, let's open that up. Okay, so you would insert, and I have got this, by the way, on a handout, so I can put that online, and I've got 2 copies here. Maybe that's something we can do, but I have got the basis behind that on a handout for you. Okay, so you'd insert the photograph. So I'm just going to go into desktop because I know that that's where it is. And then I'll go green screen, year 10, and I'll pull that in. Okay, so that's our beautiful prints. Now to go in behind it, and yes, these are slightly out of focus. Don't give the camera to the students. In the end, if you want quality control, be the control freak. You take the photos. If you're happy for the students to take the photos and find that they've got a foot missing or a hand missing somewhere, and then they come to you and say, "But Miss, we can't use this," and I go, "Well, who took the photos?" You know, they don't necessarily see the end product yet. They just see they're having fun taking the photos, but they don't necessarily and then they're fussy enough to want to go and do it again. And you can't, you haven't got your costumes here. Let's be real about this. Okay, so in PowerPoint, up the top here, you've got remove background. That little magic button, if I press that button, it will hopefully take away all the green. Okay, that's my magic button. Now, as you can see here, part of his pants are missing. So I need to go back in, and there's a little button up here that says mark areas to keep. Okay, so if I go on that, bring that down here, it will actually bring that back in. And so you can go around and fix all the little bits up that have disappeared or that all of a sudden appear when you hit the button again. The next step then is to accept those changes. So you keep the changes, and that gives you your image. From there, you go back into import picture, insert picture. Say flowers. I'll put some flowers just for the sake of this activity. So he's in a lovely garden, bonsai garden somewhere. Okay, so, and yes, we've just distorted that, that's fine. You send then the picture backwards, and that brings our little image back in front. So as I travel, have a bank of pictures that I can use. That saves any copyright issues, because nowadays in our world of copyright, if you own the photograph, you have the photograph copy. 2 good websites, one good website that I've learnt to use is Pixabay. Pixabay will give you free images. Just check though there's a particular button you can press that'll let you know whether it's copyright free, but generally the things on Pixabay are copyright free. But it's much easier to have your own images, and the students don't get it that images are copyrighted because they're so used to swiping materials from everywhere, as are teachers. We're good at it. All right, but we've got to remember, if like today I'm showing you things, at least I know the material in the background of that is actually my material, not taken from anywhere else on the web, and we can use it. And that hasn't been always that easy, because as computer technology has improved, we also have improvement on the type of images we can use. Your iPhones, your personal phones probably take better images than some of the early digital cameras, because their quality is quite good for the small image that we need. Remembering that a 10 megapixel image allows you to produce a picture that's twice the size of the table that's sitting in front of me. You don't need that. You only need a tiny one. And that's the second part you've got to work with though, because if your files are too big, and the sound files will make them big if you're going to do that type of thing that I did with the fairy tales, you have to reduce somewhere. Okay, and sometimes it's the image that you have to reduce. So that has to be worked through maybe before you bring it into the PowerPoint, or you can compress things later. But for today, that's the basis of how green screening works. Okay, now and that's why I called it Selfie Anywhere in the World, Not Leaving Your Classroom, because that's really what it allows you to do. It allows you to take pictures of your students, or students to take pictures of things and place them with an image behind it, and then write to that or speak to that. So that's up to you. You can put it in PowerPoints, they can use it in Prezi presentations, however it is then workable. But it's a starting point for them just to make that a little bit more. And there's your ICT image part of your teaching that can be used as well, so that it opens a different door. Now, the other part where I said that I was part of this presentation with Joe Dale, I've got a few things that are to do with app smashing. He had a session on app smashing, which that's where the green screening was part of the early part, and then you combine it with something else to produce a piece of paper that has, well, it's actually more a technology type thing where you can open it up, press a button, and the kids talk about this image, or they've written about something listen. So it's a newspaper a la, dare I say, Harry Potter style, where the images come alive within the piece of paper. It's a web thing. You can't print it because you're going to lose the voice tag with that. But the principles behind it is what is important, I suppose. So let me just minimise this, I'll close that one, go into here. So the concept of app smashing, and yes, I have that on a piece of paper too, or I can pass that on, is basically to create content with one app and save it to the camera roll. So for those of you who have Apple machines, this is your way of working, okay? So your camera roll is your friend. Whatever you do goes back into the camera roll and then gets passed out to the next step, okay? So that's the baseline of what was being brought that particular session. I'm not here to reproduce that session. I'm just letting you know that that's some of the things that are happening out there, and it was brought in as a language teacher perspective. The next. Now, this is the toolkit. These are, and I went, again, I have this here, all right? So if you need it on a piece, or if you want to get a better shot of it, yep. That's the basic toolkit. The most important one for us on this one is the green screen one with the little octopus on the right-hand corner at the top, because that allows you to do exactly what we did in PowerPoint. Okay, so that's your green screen. That automatically will let you take the photo with the green screen tucked behind it. All right, so I don't know what devices you have at schools, but these are the camera you should already have on your, automatically on your tablet. Some of the other things you might need to look at. Obviously, Lego Maker will let you do your movie bit, all right? So, but these were the basic apps, if you like, that they suggested that you need to do any of this sort of app smashing sort of material, okay? And we went and collected this, and I think we ended up paying something like, on average, $35. Some are more expensive than others, and we had to twist the IT department's arm because, thanks to Kathy's funding a few years back, we actually got some iPads. We had enough iPads for at that point, because we said we needed them for language teaching because of the ability that can allow. It makes it hard when you're not supposed to use the net on them. So some of these rely a bit on net transfer. But on whole, it's the camera roll that's important, because the process is you take a few things, put it in the camera roll, and then go back to the camera roll to get that thing to make the next bit, okay? And just so that you know, I have the condensed version of that for you too. I've got that too, all right, on the process of how that app smashing works, because I put it together for my students because I felt they needed to be able to play with things that they have, particularly the iPad, iPhone type technology, to be, and they might not use it in languages anymore. And I think I've got it upside down. No, they might not use it in language, but it might give them an opportunity to use it in another subject, make their presentation a little bit different. Okay, so that's what this is a condensed version of what happened during that particular presentation. So, for example, the end product on the Joe Daily was App Smash. Okay, they took the camera, they put it to the camera roll, they went to the next little app, they put it back to the camera roll. And yes, it is an superimposed collage in the end, but it all comes together on one piece that has that interactive little spoken piece in the middle of it, and that's how they were using it. So it is, in the end, it's a collage of different things produced in one item. And they post it to Twitter. And that's, for schools, may be a problem. The other way you can get around it, well, how we did it is we ended up asking the kids to email it to us.
In this case too, this particular example here, no student's faces are seen.
No.
So it is something.
And that's why the avatar's good, and that app's avatar was there. You can replace that, and that allows that a little bit better. It depends on your school's policy. It really does. Our place, it's a no. We just don't do it. And I suppose we could get away with it, but we then ask them to basically email it. We then do it that way. All right. If you put the photograph into PowerPoint, like we did before with that, I'll try and pull him up again with the gentleman. You can actually save the PowerPoint as a JPEG file. So it doesn't have to be a photo, it doesn't have to be a PowerPoint file anymore. You can save every slide you have as a JPEG file. When you do that, I've published books that way. I've sent the JPEGs as a photograph off to Harvey Norman, off to the photo place, and made a storybook and produced a storybook with students as well. They can illustrate, write the text, put it into PowerPoint. Write it before you put it into PowerPoint, because PowerPoint doesn't like, for a German example, umlauts and things. So you have to put that in Word and import that in. But when you save the PowerPoint then as a JPEG file, you'll have 15 pictures that you can then send off, put together in one of our little photo books for $10, or whatever they are nowadays. I mean, you have to, and produce your own. And that the students like that too, because they've got a hard copy, and the parents are even better. Good sales pitch, that one, because the parents see something that the kids have produced, and not just language. What are you doing language for? You know, they have got a hard copy of something. All right, so I'll see if I can just quickly do that. Sorry, I've just moved out of range. So if I now go into this file here and save as, I'll go into there. Okay, so now I've got the save file. If I drop it, there's my Dropbox. With the 50 million options, no, the 20 options I can do with my PowerPoint, you'll see that JPEG file interchange format, which is about 3/4 of the way down, which is about here. That now makes me a JPEG file, and that allows me to make it a picture. So if I hit save on that, what does it tell me not to do?
Do you want to export all slides?
Oh yeah, because I've got one slide. Yeah, just hit yes. And of course, if you have more than one slide in there and you've got the 15, and that's what it'll actually do that. So you can find that JPEG. That's now a photograph, and you can insert that photograph somewhere else. Okay? So, and obviously this person here in the middle, he can be moved anywhere on the photograph before you do anything. Okay, so he can be moved that way, wherever you'd like to position. Yeah, you can shrink him. So he can now become, when I find the little, he can be a little person amongst all this garden green. All right, so that's the advantage of playing in this, and it really is playing. You know, it's not perfect, shouldn't be perfect. Enjoy mucking, a wonderful term of English, mucking around with it, because that's really what it's all about, experimentation. Okay. All right. Sorry. Now I'm finished.